Chaverim, you may be seated. Let me invite you to once again take out your Chumashim, and I'll invite you to turn to page 30, which is the beginning of chapter 5. And who remembers what your homework assignment was? Birds. Or boys, as some might say. So what was your homework assignment while we were doing the Torah reading? What's different? All right, we have the generational genealogy. It's 10 generations going from Adam all the way to Noah. And so that was the assignment. So what did you find? Lifespan changes. Okay, what else? Well, theoretically, okay, but they all have lots of children. All right, so that's not different. Well, that's not all that different, but okay, keep going. Sam? Okay, so let's park Enoch over here, because I'm going to suggest that that's not the first significant change. That's not the first significant change, because he's the end of the genealogy. So I'm going to suggest that the first genealogy, if Enoch's not the first change, that's something different before Enoch. Ah, very good. Thank you. So the very first one, and you don't know it's a change until you get to the second and the third, but only with regard to Adam are we told that he births children in his image and in his semblance, right? So why does the Torah choose to emphasize that aspect of Noah, but not for anyone subsequent? Adam, did I say something? Adam, yes. Why does God choose to emphasize that Adam reproduces in his image and in his semblance, but doesn't seem to feel the need to do that for any subsequent generations? Okay, Arnie? Oh. Okay, so we're all rooted in Adam. Very good. But take it even a step farther. What are the terms that are used? It's in his image and in his semblance. Yeah, Wayne. They follow in the line of God's will. In fact, how does the Torah describe how God creates Adam? B'Tselem Elohim bara oto, b'dmut Elohim bara oto. That God creates Adam himself in an image, in a semblance of God, and Adam is then able to replicate that in the transmission of human procreation. And so it gives us what Arnie said about all of us being descended from a single individual and therefore connected. It's about the image of God that Adam transmits without the divine intervention, but as part of the natural process of human procreation. Okay, very good. So that's the first thing that we notice. And now I think we can probably play a little bit with Enoch. All right, so what does the Torah tell us about Enoch? So you jump to verse 21. Okay, he's younger than the people who come before him when he starts to have children. But each subsequent generation seems to have begun the procreative process earlier and lived, with the exception of Methuselah, a shorter and shorter time span. Right? But what else does the text tell us about Enoch? He walked with God. Okay. What does that mean? They met at the Nolan Trail and they hiked in the afternoon. Was meint das? I mean, because, yeah. He walked, all right, and it doesn't say that specifically that God favored him. We save that for a little later, right? But he walked with God. There was something about Enoch that was different than everybody who came before him. He had an awareness of God, right? And what happens to him? All right, remember the pattern. Each of these others ends with Vayamot. He died. All right, what does Enoch end with? Veinenu. He's gone. Poof. Why? Ki lakach oto Elohim. Because God took him. Right? There's something different in the implication here. Right? So what's the implication? Well, I'll tell you what. You should live and be well till 120, and when you get to Olam Haba, you can check the video archive. God touches those who... do we know that God loves Enoch? Don't trust what rabbis say at eulogies. Okay. Before he was no more, but does the text actually tell us how God felt about Enoch? No. We assume that if Enoch was tight with God, that would have evoked a positive, right? And in some ways it seems to have, because theoretically Enoch doesn't die. He's taken, right? And not in the, E.T. alien sense of being taken. Right? Who else suffers a similar fate to Enoch did? Moses dies. But he dies. It says specifically that he dies. Okay, so now we have to be very, very precise in our language here. All right, yes, he dies with a kiss from God, so it's clearly unique and special. But he dies and he's buried by God in an unknown location. But he's not whisked away. So who else? I heard many voices, but I understood none of them. Elijah, yes, they were very famous, all right? And what, all right, Elijah ascends into heaven in this fiery chariot, and what's Elijah been doing since he ascended to heaven? Okay, well, yes, he's become quite a wine connoisseur. And if he's not visiting your house, then maybe you need to up your wine offerings. Your drinking menu. Yes. But remember that the Seder, as we now kind of know it with the cups of wine and blah, 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 doesn't exist until after, or either the late temple period or shortly thereafter. So what's Elijah's job before he becomes a wine connoisseur? He's got hundreds and hundreds of years. He shows up at brisses, all right? There is wine there too, but he doesn't get any, all right? Why does Elijah show up at every bris that happens, which, by the way, is also sort of a rabbinic model, which they sort of transpose. But why is he there? What's he looking for? Not the wine. He is there to see, is this child potentially the Messiah? Is this the child that's going to redeem the world? Right? What what else does Elijah do? What else does he do? He's got to do something between, Brit Milah, Britei Milah happen regularly. We got the Pesach thing, where we invite him to Havdalah. Not clear that he shows up, but we invite him or sing about him. Yeah, he's the announcer of the Messiah and the Messianic era, which is part of why he's checking out all these potential kids. Yeah, Max. Interesting, he could be, but he's not actually on the list because he doesn't wait for Sukkot. Throughout rabbinic literature, Elijah shows up regularly. He has conversations with the sages. He gives them little clues about how to understand things. All right? There are all these narratives of Elijah showing up in shuls that are desperately waiting for a 10th person to show up. Right? He's that mysterious figure that shows up in all sorts of situations. He shows up at someone's home when they're trying to celebrate, whether it's Shabbat or Pesach or some other festival, and they don't have the financial wherewithal to do it. And he shows up and magically, mysteriously appears a beautiful meal. And when it's over and they go to thank him, poof, Elijah is gone. Mentioned in the bracha for the Haftarah. Yes, all right. All in the Haftarah and Birkat Hamazon on Friday, on Shabbat night, all of that is tied to his role as this mysterious wanderer who we want to visit us and who will come and announce the Messianic era, this remarkable future. So that's what Elijah does after he mysteriously is taken but doesn't die. All right? What does Enoch do from this moment forward? Nothing. Okay? So the question is, what happens to Enoch, and why does he seem to have such a small or almost invisible footprint? Elijah becomes ubiquitous everywhere. Enoch walks with God so much so that God's willing to take him in this mysterious moment, but he literally not only disappears from this world, but he disappears from our history. Right? In fairness, before we had this conversation, how many of you ever thought about Enoch? 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, 4.5. That was a timid hand raise, right? But most of us, we don't think about Enoch because we zoom past him. Okay, something weird happened at his funeral. No. He's certainly scooped up by God, so he must have been doing something, right? Yeah. Yeah, he clearly earned a certain amount of divine approval, and that sort of comes out in his final fate. But it's just an interesting contrast with this one other character who becomes ubiquitous in our history, whereas Enoch, whatever he achieved only for himself. Ooh. Yeah, that would require a certain amount of reincarnation, and we don't really go there. Okay, I thought I saw a hand. Susan. Okay, so he seems to be, though, okay. So he's being sort of identified as an exemplar, and so therefore his fate is different because he sort of becomes a role model. Um, so I'm going to sort of bring our conversation to a close with two final thoughts. All right. One, what about the rest of the folks on this list? Are they just, do the people in our lives who just don't disappear but just die, don't they have a permanence as well? Isn't that why Yeast Core, which we just did a couple of days ago, is so powerful and impactful? Maybe you don't have to be a paradigm to be embedded in our hearts and souls. And I'll fast forward a little bit. You don't want to hear about this. It's a spoiler alert. When the patriarchs die, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob die, the Torah tells us, Vayeasef el amav, that they are gathered into their people. But the rabbis are sort of struck by the fact that, wait, Abraham is the first in the chain of the Jewish people. So into whom is he absorbed? And so they flip it not as a going backward to the people. He's not absorbed into the people who came before him, but rather he's absorbed into the people who come after him. That Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Rebekah and Jacob and Rachel and Leah become the future, the past embedded into the future. And so perhaps each of these are paradigms of how we embrace those who were significant, those who just led ordinary, everyday lives and had children and went to work and raised families and were special, perhaps not on a universal scale, but were essential in our lives. Then there are maybe the people like Enoch who were exemplars, who maybe even if we did not know them personally, could inspire us by how they lived. And then there are the people who are embedded into us, who are absorbed by us through the teachings of our Torah and our tradition, and all of them have a powerful role to play in shaping who we are, how we act, and how we draw closer to God. Averim, let me invite you to return to our Sidurim.